Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Adam Gurga. He's a national manager for grocery and retail partnerships at Cimcorp. And Cimcorp is an integrator focused on automation within the fulfillment space, particularly focused on tire factories, grocery, and retail, which I think is a pretty interesting mix. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But we're going to learn about Cimcorp, and then we're going to focus on a little bit of the grocery fulfillment side and talking about what's going on in that space and how Cimcorp is addressing some of the problems and helping to create faster speed of delivery for that grocery fulfillment. So, Adam, welcome to the show today. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me, Kevin.
Definitely happy to have you on. Happy to talk about this. We haven't had Cimcorp on the podcast before, so why don't you tell us a little bit about Cimcorp and what it is that you guys do?
Yeah, for sure. First off, I'll say, I love this podcast. It's something, as we've been going to a lot of these trade shows, and this fall, these trade shows kind of pick up for us again, right? We've got Grocery Shop in Vegas, and it's always good to get caught up on some of the trends here by listening to you guys while we're on the plane here. So
thank you.
But Cimcorp, so we go back to 1975. We're a global end-to-end integrator of automation solutions, and we've got some unique technologies that we bring to the grocery retail space. Our global headquarters is just north of Helsinki, Finland. We've got offices just outside of Atlanta, in India, Madrid, Spain, Germany, and we just opened up our Australian office a few months ago as well. So, like I said, we're full end-to-end integrator of automation solutions. We've got a focus on warehouse and distribution and also tire, which is definitely an interesting mix, but kind of speaks to the unique technology that we're bringing to the table here with the gantry solutions. We were fully purchased by Murata Machinery, which is based out of Japan. And I think the purpose of that was really to round out Murata's global footprint, specifically on this grocery and perishable side, with a focus on, fresh, bakery, dairy, produce picking for grocery retailers too, because Murata is pretty big. They've got 5 business domains, kind of verticals that they work across, huge in textile machinery. They've got their fab and machine tools, communications equipment. Cimcorp really falls into the logistics and automation side. And we brought a lot of that expertise on the fresh food, bakery, retail, and food service side there for them. So it's been a really good partnership. It really rounds out kind of the solutions we bring to the table for some of our big customers here in North America.
Interesting stuff, and definitely a very interesting kind of the mix there, as I touched on in the beginning, as you kind of mentioned in there too. So I'm curious. You said that the tire side and the grocery retail are kind of, the equipment lends itself to each other. So tell us how that kind of comes together and where the synergies are there, because that's a pretty interesting contrast.
It is. So it kind of dates back to our origins here in Finland back in 1975. The first overhead gantry robots that Cimcorp manufactured were smaller, much smaller, and they were used to move cathode ray tubes for old tube TVs in the manufacturing process to place them in the frames that they would go into. So if you think about the gantry robotics we've got, and if you go online and take a look at some of the systems we've got, they're pretty elegant and simple in design. It's really two frames that kind of run a specific length, customized length that the customer needs, and then our robots that run on the frames over top. So in the grocery and retail space, where we're really driving success for our customers there is picking of fresh food product in cases that are already in totes. So think bakery trays for dairy, think milk and dairy crates. And then on the case pick side for groceries, we're actually loading produce and other perishables items into systems totes. And then the robot moves along the grid overhead and then picks those trays or those cases to outfeed them either to a palletizing station or a goods to person station where we would handle that product there. But if you think about it on a tire side, tires are an interesting product to try to handle, specifically from a labor perspective. When you're trying to do it manually, they're heavy, right. They're kind of awkward to pick up. But if you stack them like donuts on top of each other and you've got something from overhead that just goes down into the center and expands a gripper, you can very easily pick up full stacks of tires all at a time or individual tires and mix the stacks for customers as they're being shipped outbound. So it's really kind of a unique approach to tire that's been kind of a lights out solution for tire distributors, for decades now.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Because when I went on your website, to be honest, I saw like tire factories and grocery and retail, and I'm like, what? Yeah, it's pretty wild mix, but that makes a lot of sense. That kind of fits that, and obviously, like you said, I mean, certainly tires are a challenging thing to fulfill, especially from the labor perspective, just because of the awkwardness, as you mentioned, and how do you ship them? I mean, so it's really interesting that you guys have been able to find that synergy in the technology that you offer and the setups that you do. But you were focused on the grocery and retail side. So I want to talk about grocery fulfillment a little bit. So tell us kind of right now, because certainly online grocery fulfillment has exploded. It became very, very big because of the pandemic when people couldn't really go to the grocery store and had no choice, essentially, right? So tell us about, some of the challenges that are currently in the market and maybe some of the challenges that were created from that kind of spike and rush within the grocery fulfillment space.
Yeah, so I think top of the list, what we're hearing from all of our customers and the companies we're working with across not just North America, but really, really worldwide right now, is the challenges to the labor pool. And there's some trends that I see that aren't going to really help this challenge be alleviated anytime soon. So if you take a look at some projections in the US and the EU that show the labor pools, the labor shortages happening, there's actually some demographics that trend along with that are going to continue to create this very difficult environment to find and source labor to manually handle, whether it's cases or whatever's going on in the DC for our customers there. So you see kind of a decline or an aging population where the generations are starting to retire. You've got less and less younger people who want to do that work. They tend to have higher levels of education than previous generations, and it leads them to seek out those white collar jobs that really require the specialized knowledge and skills that they went to college for. That younger generation, they view these physical jobs in the warehouse as temporary or entry-level positions. There's not a lot of long-term career prospect for them. So There's this stigma of blue-collar work that pushes the younger labor force, the younger generation, into different career aspirations that provide better work-life balance, personal growth. They don't see the positive trade-off from a wage perspective. They're thinking, why make $20 an hour throwing boxes all day when I can walk across the street and make nearly the same for doing something less physical. Yeah. And that labor pool is going to get continually more competitive for talent as these physical jobs become less and less desirable. So, these factors are really likely to exacerbate these challenges even further, even as the pool of available workers, from what I see, maybe for the next 20, 25 years or so, is going to continue to decline and be more and more limited. So you can go down kind of a rabbit hole on demographics to take a look at what's driving a lot of these challenges right now. And that's where I think Cimcorp is really positioned to kind of help in the near term versus the long term, because feedback right now is a lot of the network capacity from a distribution standpoint from our customers is nearly maxed out. But there's still desires, especially for publicly traded companies, private companies as well, for growth. So, we're hearing that the goal is to continually gain market share, build out brands and regional footprints, but all these distribution centers are at max capacity, and it's really even harder to try to get labor to staff them. So there's thoughts out there of, hey, should we build new regional mega greenfield sites and absorb all this distribution from a region into a centralized DC? And the way that I'm looking at it more from Cimcorp's standpoint with some of these modular solutions that we're trying to look at is, why don't we take a look at the network, retrofit some of the legacy DCs with some really, really slick technology, and get you another 15 or 20 years of network capacity out of those existing DCs. But, that's kind of in a nutshell. I think that's not a unique problem to any one company. It's everyone who's feeling that pain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's great points there about the labor pool, and how do we try and get them more interested. And it's interesting too, because it's like the younger generation that's not interested in that type of work is also part of the generation that's probably driving the most work towards e-commerce fulfillment and things like that, as well as they're the most active online, right? So it's a pretty interesting contrast there. But I'm curious there about what you mentioned about having to kind of get these mega greenfield distribution centers versus, how do we prolong the life of existing facilities? What are some of the challenges there from like an automation perspective? Because I think a lot of times in the past, at least, it's been that, it's difficult to work around some older buildings that maybe were not originally built with, some automation solutions in mind and things like that. I mean, how do you kind of address some of that and work around, what might not be a perfect building in a sense that would be built today?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and it's something that when we approach our customers at first, we want to be very thoughtful in how we consider how we do this. It's not to say that building a new warehouse, a greenfield project from the ground up isn't a good idea. It can be, and we've participated in a lot of projects. We've led projects, especially with our parent company Murata, where we're looking at new mega sites and greenfields that are going to absorb all that regional network volume. But I think, when building a new warehouse, it might be a logical solution. It gives you a lot of flexibility. Retrofitting is typically less expensive. With the new buildings, you've got rising costs of land acquisition to deal with, not to mention infrastructure lead times, logistical remapping. You've got zoning challenges. I think in the long run, it provides you with that, that flexible, custom optimized fit. But it's a heavy, resource intense process, and it takes years to plan, let alone deploy. And with the challenges that our customers have been seeing immediately, now with the labor crunch and the network capacity issues that they're running into, we're looking for something that we can deploy a little bit faster. So this is where our gantry systems and some of our shuttle systems too really make a lot of sense from a retrofitting standpoint. We provide with what we call the 3D shuttle, which is essentially a floor-based, no racking overhead gantry system that picks cases that are auto-fed into system totes out. That'll either run immediately to a palletizing process or to a goods-to-person process as well. Mm-hmm. But it's a dense cubic storage system, and it's efficient case picking. We can access any of those cases in about 9 seconds or less. Wow. And that really kind of lends itself to, where we're focusing on produce and perishables and the grocery retail fulfillment network as well. I think it comes down to, when our customers are taking a look at what type of system they want to install in their sites, is there an ability to get very flexible, modular, but can you scale if you need to based on network growth over time? That's really where we're focusing on some of these technologies. And those are the conversations we're having with our customers, not just a kind of one size fits all, but how do we put something in that's flexible to the buildings that you have now, avoid some of the difficult installations of sprinklers and racking systems, but still get that throughput that you need to continue growth.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think it's a really interesting challenge. It's interesting to see how you guys are addressing it, and, especially focusing on, like you said, the produce and perishable type of goods, which you don't need to move quickly because they have a life cycle, right? And, also need to be cautious too as well, because they can be fragile at times too. If you look at certain fruits, vegetables, they can definitely be fragile. So, but I'm curious on that side too, because a lot of that sometimes, and especially on the grocery side, needs to be either refrigerated or temperature regulated. How do you kind of build your automation solutions so that they're able to adapt and able to work for a long time within like a colder environment? Because I know that's, necessarily some cold environments and mechanical parts are not always the best of friends, I guess you could say. How do you guys kind of deal with that and make that work?
Completely. No, you're completely right. There's definitely some limitations, not just with our automation, but in automation in general, once you start to push below that freezing level. Right? Yeah. So we can get right down to freezing almost. But when you start to get some condensation in that environment, and it starts to interrupt some of the rails where the wheels are operating and all of that, it definitely creates a lot of issues. So what we've seen in freezer environments, a lot of the times it's, some high bay warehouse with cranes that will pull single SKU pallets down, and then it will still be a manual process where the order selection is going to happen kind of as a goods to person station, which is definitely a challenge in the industry right now. There's some solutions out there on the perishable side. If we start to go just above freezing, still in the chilled environments, we really don't see a ton of problems there. I would say, if you take a look at some of the ASRS solutions that are out there today, especially on fulfillment, one of the things that we need to stay cautious of is food safety and access to foods in these perishable and produce environments. The cubic dense ASRS solutions that are out there for fulfillment are fantastic when it comes to really condensing your storage and pick areas. They're fantastic when it comes to shelf stable products or non-food items. But when we start to move into, produce, which has a shorter shelf life, and our customers want to get it to the shelf as quickly as possible, so that customers are buying the freshest produce as possible, there's some issues with redundancy I see in some of those ASRS systems that we need to address. And that's what we're trying to do here with Cimcorp, utilizing the floor space. We get as cubic and dense as possible, but we're also using the inherent nature of the systems totes or the bakery trays, the dairy crates, to stack on top of each other instead of having to use some kind of racking or grid. And I'll go back to a comment directly from one of our customers where they were trying to use a system like that for perishables, and one of the robots had gone down, and there's there's lettuce and tomatoes sitting in the middle of this cube, and physically, manually, they had no way to really go get it except for shutting down, whole sections of it and then having to go in and clean. And it was a really intense process. So that's one of the reasons why I think we've been successful in produce. The European market has adopted RPCs much faster than the North American market has. But if you take a look at some of the systems we have over in Spain and Germany and Finland, if something happens and we need to remove produce from the center of our grid, we can simply go in and access those totes at any point in time. They're stored on the floor, and we're picking them with the gantry robot from above. So we simply call that robot to move out of the way so it's not picking up a person. And then the person goes in and removes the totes, and then you hit the on button again, and the system starts back up. So it's redundancy and safety issues like that we're trying to keep in mind for our customers.
Interesting. Yeah. And that's a very interesting story about the tomatoes there in the middle. I can imagine that was not a fun task to try and clean that up. So it's really interesting. And I think there's a lot of challenge there is there. And I think, too, it's important to kind of note that you guys are focusing on that specific type of product and issue to solve that, where I think, some of the other, as you mentioned, like ASRS systems that are out there are kind of trying to be all encompassing in a sense. And I think, that essentially maybe down the road that kind of misses some of those steps that maybe would be important for like a situation with produce or something like that. So really interesting there. Now I'm curious your thoughts and kind of the translation of the automation solutions you guys are doing for grocery and how that's kind of translating over to speed of delivery around grocery fulfillment. So obviously you guys are, working with a lot of companies that are doing grocery fulfillment. So, with grocery, I think that's probably the one thing that we say is definitely people want to have delivered same day, I think, without a doubt, right, for the most part. So, how is that speed of delivery really kind of driving the market and what companies are looking to invest in, and how are they trying to address keeping up with that demand and getting groceries out the door, within a couple hours?
Yeah, it's definitely coming, and you hit the nail on the head. The necessity is that we're going to have to deliver these products within a day, right? If you're going to try to replace the in-store experience of going and picking up an apple and deciding which one you want to put in your bag to bring home, you're going to have to make sure that the apples you're delivering are absolutely fresh. And this is it's a critical piece in the supply chain that needs to be addressed, because we can provide these ASRS and picking solutions, whether it's something like an auto store or Cimcorp's gantry robots, whatever that may be. But then there's the delivery and the last mile component to it too. And I think I was just reading recently where some grocery retailers are losing anywhere between $7 and $25 on some of their orders here, these fulfillment orders that are going to the customer, and that. Most of it, by and large, a lot of it is coming from the delivery piece, that last mile piece. So how do we solve that? It's the one thing we can try to do is accelerate the pick process as quickly as possible. So, for instance, we have produce systems that have 6 pick modules, and they're pushing 120,000 cases in a 24-hour period. That's how we've tried to contribute to it, where it's essentially pick to zero systems that Cimcorp would provide, where the suppliers, the farmers, are shipping in produce in cases and RPCs, and the gantry system is quick enough to bring everything into storage, reprocess it, build those orders from single SKU stacks into mixed stacks, and try to get them out the door as quickly as possible in under 24, so our customers can deliver that to their end customer there too. But I think the thing that needs to be addressed, and there's definitely a lot of push with companies like Walmart and Amazon to get there, is that last mile delivery. Somewhere where Cimcorp's not really playing in right now. We're more of an in-house automation, case pick, high bay warehouse solution. But, that critical component is we need to be able to build those orders as fast as possible for our customers to get them out the door as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, part of the beginning of the solution, right, is at least being able to get the orders up and together in order to be able to even hit that last mile carrier, or however that will get to the end consumer. And I think it's really interesting challenge to be able to do that much throughput and get that through. I think it's, you have to utilize some type of automation to be able to do that. It's really interesting to see kind of how you guys are going about that and trying to come up with that solution to be able to address that and increase that throughput. Are you seeing that as you're talking to customers or potential customers, that more and more companies that didn't have automation previously are now like really getting interested in automation? Are you seeing that interest is picking up in that area?
Yeah, completely. And there's a lot of options out there right now for sure. But I think everyone's at least entertaining something where they may have been hesitant in the past. And I think, it's really maybe COVID really was the catalyst for a lot of that exploration, or that additional exploration in areas where it wasn't being done before. But if you take a look, going back to that original point on demographics, where the younger generations are just having less children, right? Which means that we're going to have a smaller labor pool over the next 20 to 25 years. And it's not unique to the US. It's actually even occurring even more widespread in the EU and Japan and parts of Asia as well. So it's something that everybody's got to look at some point in time, because you still need to get product out the door to your customers, but we've got a smaller and smaller pool of people to draw on to do that. You're always going to need people in those warehouses. I think the idea of kind of a full black box, lights out warehouse seems very intriguing to a lot of retailers and grocers. And we're close. There's a lot of automators that get almost there, but there's going to be issues where you've got to have somebody on hand to address it. And there's always going to be a manual presence somewhere within that supply chain. I think automation also opens up doors to maybe a more equitable warehouse experience, where, if you've got 50, 60 pound cases of beef or orange juice that were really tough for some people to throw before or move around, how does automation and, cohabitation of people and robots work together to kind of, even though we've got a limited labor pool, broaden it to other people who may not have been able to work in that warehouse environment before. So because of all these reasons, we're going to see a continued trend of people exploring more and more technologies, different technologies for different segments of their warehouse. We mentioned I talked a lot about how the gantry system here is very ideal for produce and a lot of perishables because of the sanitation component and the speed that we can pick. But in some cases, like, beverage distribution, we might be looking at some trickier cases to stack, and maybe it's something more of a shuttle-based technology. But whatever industry you're in, if you're moving packages through a warehouse, you're looking at some type of automation for it now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, from your comments earlier about the labor situation, and I think just in general, trying to keep up with the overall throughput that's needed, it's pretty much an essential for an operation to get into some type of automation, whether it's just simple, pallet movements or any type of repetitive movement, or it's more complex ASRS type of systems or stuff like you guys are doing. I think, you have to start to look at that and put that into your plans, within the next year to be able to start to execute. And I think really set yourself up for continued success into the years to come. So really interesting insights from you here, Adam, and really interesting to learn about Cimcorp and kind of dive into the grocery fulfillment side as well, and just fulfillment and automation in general. So really appreciate you coming on and telling us all about this. If people are interested in learning more about Cimcorp, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can go to our website, www.cimcorp.com. We've got our YouTube channel that shows a lot of the different gantry technologies. I know I talked about that at length today, and it's easier to see it than explain it. you can always reach out to me as well. But yeah, that'd probably be the best way to go about it.
All right, great. And we'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so people can easily find it. So Adam, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.